I've got the new Facebook layout and I can't find anything. All right. We are live. I've got the new Facebook layout and I can't find anything. All right, we're live.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ghost Education's 101 presentation on poltergeists. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. My name is Alex Matsuo, and I am the founder and director of the Association of Paranormal Study. And I'm also a author, blogger, and YouTuber with the spooky stuff. I'm going to go ahead and have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start with Matthew.
Hey, I'm Matthew Jackson. I'm a blogger myself and paranormal investigator. My blog is paraholics.com.
All right, let's have Heather.
Hey everybody, I'm Heather. I have a PhD in paranormal science, as well as I'm a blogger and the founder of Exploration Paranormal out here in Vegas.
Awesome. Cliff.
My name is Cliff Knight. I'm the team founder and lead investigator of the Ghost Stalkers out of Arlington, Texas, and we've been doing it for about 10 years now.
Amazing. Good. Lisa?
I'm Lisa Miller-Schnurr, and I'm the blogger, thehauntedlibrarian.com.
And last but not least, Philip.
Hello, I'm Philip Wyatt, and you should probably all know me by now. I'm an investigator. My team is MCAP, Mystery Center for Paranormal Phenomena, and I also do some things on my own too that you can see on my personal paranormal page. But get ready, this is going to be really good tonight.
I am very excited, and y'all are in for a treat tonight, and we're so glad to have everyone watching on Facebook Live, or if you're watching the recording, also on YouTube. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them into the chat on Facebook. We do have people watching the chat. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button for Ghost Education 101 so you can get the latest updates on future presentations just like this. All right, and we will get rolling. Ooh, flash of light. All right, so what is a poltergeist? And I mean, how many of us have seen the movie?
Oh, yeah.
Me,
Yes. Yeah, and the remake? I have not seen the remake.
remakes are horrible.
Boo, remakes. But is the movie Poltergeist accurate to what a poltergeist actually is?
In the very beginning, but it lost its way about halfway through, if not before that.
We will find out tonight.
Yes, we will. Yep. And feel free, our viewers watching on Facebook, let us know what you think as well. So now let's get the movie out of our heads as best we can, even though this lovely PowerPoint has a lot of reminders of the movie. Not movie science tonight. So, all right. So let's talk about poltergeists and what we believe they are. So let's just start with this lovely little explanation here. And let's see, let's have Matthew take this one on.
Nothing's popping up for me to see.
Uh-oh. So the statement is, poltergeists can be the most frightening, destructive, and most difficult to diagnose of all paranormal phenomena. What are your thoughts on that, Matthew?
My thoughts on that. From reported cases historically of the phenomena, I mean, it definitely, to me, one of the most frightening and alarming. Some of the videos that people have documented, in actual poltergeist cases are, you know, definitely attention getting. They're not your run of the mill hauntings, you know, the sounds of, you know, footsteps or voices or things like that. I mean, they can be actually just way more in your face and explosive. I think it's the eruption that happens with a poltergeist haunting that is probably the most alarming.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Cliff, what are your thoughts on this?
The most I've been involved with them is probably about level 1 or 2. And even those can be quite terrifying. I haven't had anything, you know, thrown at me, or, you know, I've seen things move before, but I haven't gone beyond stage probably 2. But yeah, I mean, I've heard stories that just are very, very bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lisa.
Well, we actually had a poltergeist when I was growing up, and living in Reno, Nevada. And my mom and dad, I was 3 years old. And so it actually, the stories that my mom tells, my dad's deceased now, but would talk about the different activities that they would have in the house and everything. And that's actually, they would find me communicate or talking, playing with the poltergeist. And so it's interesting because I think the media has kind of made us think that a poltergeist should act one way, when in fact a poltergeist can act different ways. And then we also have the uncertainty of what actually causes a poltergeist, because now we see, before the poltergeist was this mischievous spirit, right? Going back with the definition and the evolution of it. And now the belief is that it's a lot of them are caused by teenagers, with hormonal teenagers and causing and so forth. So I think that poltergeists are almost to a point where we're actually at an umbrella title for them. And there might be different types of them that we don't really know, we haven't encountered yet.
Awesome. And I agree, and I completely agree with that. Heather, what are your thoughts on poltergeists and your experience with them?
Actually, up until recently, I never really thought I had experience with poltergeists. Oh, hold on, my computer's acting up.
This presentation is brought to you live with all of the tech issues.
And I don't know what my computer was doing, but I know
your slides look different than the way I had them on my PowerPoint. So
interesting.
I'm not sure if they'll do something weird or not. Just cautioning you.
Caution everybody.
But yeah, looking back though, it can be scary, because if the incident that I experienced as a teenager, it's all about the unknown again. And there's so many different theories about it that people are so scared because they don't know what's happening. And not every team has the same story, because some think it's the noisy ghost, others think it's the brought on by the teenager. And then just looking back, like my experience, we had a car that just constantly malfunctioned. Middle of the night, the car horn would just start going off. And we never, no malfunctions, car tested out perfectly fine. So looking back, it's like, I just wonder if that was actual poltergeist activity in our house, because I was at that teenage age frame and, all the angst that you have at that age. And it's just very interesting, but it can be very scary if you don't know what's going on and all the different answers that you get.
Nice. Teenage angst, which, yeah. And teenage angst is pretty powerful. I mean, we'll probably learn a lot more about that as we go on throughout our evening. So, okay. So, let's see, who shall I choose for this one? So let's see. Well, I guess my question for you all is, who can see this slide?
I can
Cliff?
now. I figured it out.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have Cliff take this one on.
Okay. Poltergeist is a German word meaning a noisy spirit. Oops, sorry. Got to get rid of this window. There we go. The term applied to cases in which there are reoccurrences of spontaneous physical phenomena that appear to be paranormal in nature. Because the manifestations are recurrent, mostly spontaneous and unpredictable, and seemingly involve interactions between psychological and physical events. Some researchers use the term recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. A more neutral label that does not imply the paranormal activity is necessarily caused by spirits.
Nice. Yeah, there was a lot of big words thrown out there that's not very high level. So
Yeah, thanks for those big words.
So for those of us who are not scientifically minded, hey, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, what does that mean for you? And anyone can jump in on this one.
Psychokinesis is the energy of the mind. We'll get into this in the next few slides, that manipulates our environment. And they're spontaneous. You can't control them because they're usually subconscious. And recurrent is they keep happening and for no reason. That's why it's called RSPK, because they happen spontaneously. It's not spirit related. It's our own subconscious mental energy that's causing the phenomena to happen. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Clear as mud. Yes, no, it makes sense.
It appears to be paranormal, and you would think it's a spirit. But if all the theories are true, it's not spirit related. It is personally being created by a human.
Yep. Human manifestation-ish. Is that the word I'm looking for? Probably not. Yeah. No, it's great. That's amazing. All right. All right. So let's see. Let's have Heather take this one on.
Although the world's definition implies that a poltergeist is a specific type of ghost, many experts believe they are completely different, that they have nothing to do with the spirits at all. A poltergeist is active kinetic energy that causes physical disturbances. Poltergeists aren't typically visible as ghosts, can be extremely violent with the ability to lash out and physically interact with our environment. They have been known to break objects, injure people, and wreak havoc on the physical realm.
All right. Thank you for that, Heather. And Heather, based on your research and the studies that you've done in this area, why do you think poltergeists and ghosts are often so confused with one another and seem to be used interchangeably?
Basically, it's because they kind of make the appearance that they're the same thing. If you look at them from an outsider's or someone who's unfamiliar with it from their point of view, they see things moving, they see things reacting. Electronic devices go wonky, and it's just from their point of view, not knowing the difference between the two, they think it's a ghost in their home doing all this activity.
Nice. Now, would you, by the way, everyone, this is Callie. She's a very clingy cat, as you can see. Get the elephant out of the room. So it seems that since people have a hard time differentiating between ghosts and poltergeists, and do you think this is just from mainstream ghost lore then that has sort of confused the two? And
I think a majority of it still is that not everybody knows what the new definitions for poltergeist activity is. And then it's also enhanced by the movies from the 70s and the 80s. And even some of the TV shows today, they still don't touch on it.
Okay. Yeah, I think even the more recent coverage on poltergeist still addresses poltergeist as interchangeably as ghosts. Mm-hmm. Question for the panel. So is there any possibility that poltergeists could have any sort of like intelligent or conscious thoughts or energy? Like, could they have like a afterlife, life of their own, so to speak? Or is it all coming from the person or the agent that's manifesting this kinetic energy?
I would like to think that some of them could possibly have some sort of an intelligence. Speaking of like the Catfish Plantation in Waxahachie, you've got the lady who haunts the kitchen, No one's actually ever really seen her, but she throws dishes, she knocks things over. She's a very mischievous ghost. So is she a poltergeist, or is she just a lady who's really ticked off for whatever reason?
Mhm. All right. Anyone else want to?
I think we're so conditioned to go directly when there's something paranormal that it's, an evil demon or a scary ghost. And we don't use a lot of critical thinking to look past to see, could it be something totally different? And when I was researching to do this presentation, I looked back at past cases and I started thinking, wow, I didn't think about this possibly could have been the explanation why the bear flew off the shelf that one time, never else happened again. Um, the teenage daughter was in the house. The parents were getting a divorce. As we'll get into in the next few slides, what causes this activity to occur. We have to really dig deep in our investigating and look at all avenues of why these occurrences are happening. It's just not always that scary human ghost that's there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I was going to just kind of expand on that, on what Philip was saying, because in one case that we had was the supposed or possible poltergeist activity with two teenagers and a lot of family dynamic, and the events, the paranormal events, the phenomena changed. And so sometimes it would be the throwing across the room, or noises or toys lighting up and things, compared to the story my mom tells about our poltergeist. Did the same things. It was always walking across the parquet floors. It was always all the wall of paintings all falling down, and me waking up at night and being on the landing talking. And I think it just goes back to maybe we need to further define spirits and ghosts and poltergeist, and to be able to differentiate before we can say that it is intelligent, because I think they can be intelligent if it's the paintings falling off the wall. But if it's the burst of hormonal energy, then I don't think that's intelligent.
I think there's probably a difference with like a poltergeist with a human host, and then a spirit that demonstrates poltergeist-like activity. I can see it kind of fall in two ways. So if you were investigating a case like this, you would really have to just see if there was anything intelligent there that you were dealing with versus just the human host or catalyst.
Awesome. Great thoughts, everybody. Burst of hormonal energy. I'm going to remember that.
I have those every day.
And my bursts of hormonal energy aren't normally intelligent either. So
they are accompanied by 4-letter words.
I haven't had one of those in like 30 years.
I think my grandparents called those conniptions.
I haven't heard that word in years. That's good.
All right. Nice. Okay. Let's see. Let's have Philip take this one on.
Sure.
This next one.
Poltergeist activity does not usually start with an extreme event, but usually everybody's picture's blocking. With small, sometimes trivial events that are often seen as pranks by others. The activity may quickly escalate to the extreme. Should always seek logical explanations before jumping to conclusion that it's a poltergeist. Although true poltergeist cases are well documented, it's relatively a rare occurrence. A thorough investigation should be done to determine if it's a poltergeist situation.
And I believe we actually did have a question in the chat about this. Like, how do you diagnose a poltergeist, or what is the criteria for determining whether something is a poltergeist or not? I think that's like one of the biggest questions.
That's coming up.
Oh, it's coming up. Then we'll save it. We'll save it. Okay.
I was watching. Most of their questions are going to be answered in coming up.
So hang on there, everybody. It's coming. All right. Great. So this sentence really stands out to me. You should always seek logical explanations before jumping to the conclusion it's a poltergeist. Yeah, I don't really know how much more I can contribute to that. But yeah, I feel like, I mean, even just in general, ghost hunting or investigating residential cases, especially, you want to try to rule out logical explanations as much as you can. So.
And that's something a lot of us forget to do as it's part of our jobs as an investigator. We have to look for a reason for this to be happening other than it being paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wanted to put that in there. It's like we've got to always remember we have to do our due diligence and to do justice to our clients.
Debunk first.
Yes.
Yep. And the other part is poltergeist activity is relatively rare, although, like you mentioned in the slide, we do have a lot of documented cases. But then when you think about how many investigations and ghost hunts are happening just on a daily basis, I think it's safe to say millions. There's millions of investigations done every year. And then we have, I'd say probably, I don't know, how many well-documented cases can y'all maybe guesstimate that there are, words. How many well-documented poltergeist cases do you think we have at the moment?
Well, coming up, we'll tell you about, because the length of activity of the occurrences can be so short that it may happen once.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't able to be investigated and be determined as a poltergeist. The next to the last slide, there's a long list of some of the more famous cases through history with the names and the dates, so everyone can look those up. Someone asked, where are they documented? Well, they're everywhere. I mean, there's the Society for Psychical Research, in England, that's done researching for years, since the 1800s. Everything's documented. All you have to do is Google it. Google famous poltergeist cases, and that's how I came up with the long list that's at the end. So, they're not just ghost hunters, they're actually scientists that are out here. A lot of this information came from the Rhine Institute, and that's, you can't get better than that, really. So,
sorry. Alex, so I had the same thought when I initially read this slide and questioned the part relatively a rare occurrence. And then I had to step back and realize that, first of all, so many cases are vetted to reduce that number, like you're saying, so that when people contact paranormal teams to do investigations, it's usually it's a lot of activity. So they've already gone through so much that the fall off is there. But I would also counter that we also need to talk about cases that were shown or instances where it wasn't poltergeist activity. And kind of goes with the debunking. But I think that I think I agree with Philip. I think there are a lot of numbers or a lot of cases, but so many aren't documented to that extreme.
That's a great point. All right, let's move on to the next adventure. All right, Lisa, actually, before you mute yourself.
All right. What are poltergeist phenomena? Typically, poltergeist RSPK manifestations involve recurrences of one or more of the following apparently paranormal phenomena. So we'll have knockings, rappings, footsteps, and other noises, scents and odors such as smoke or perfume, disappearing objects put in their place, disappearing and reappearing in a different place, either suddenly or days later. electrical interference, lights flickering, radios, TVs turning off with sound full blast, or turning on rather, power from nowhere, children's toys with no batteries suddenly turning on, broken clocks suddenly working, and opening and closing doors, windows, and kitchen cabinets. I actually had, with the clocks, one of my dad's desktop clocks goes backwards. And when I had my law office in a haunted building, that's when it used to go backwards all the time. Whereas now when it's at my house, it doesn't. And so that was odd.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very weird. All right.
It was cool, but you could document it. Like you could,
Yeah.
and it was weird.
Yeah.
How
Yep.
fast backwards did it go? Was it obviously moving, or did you just have to check it over time?
You would check it over time. It was like it was keeping time, but it was keeping time backwards.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Nice. So looking at this list of poltergeist phenomena, I mean, I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, how many of these bullet points are we looking at? And we're like, oh, we might have used that to say that's a ghost. So this is something very interesting to observe and point out, and especially the electrical interference part of it. I do live about 30 minutes away from the Rhine Research Center, and I've actually participated in a few of their case studies and experiments. They'll put out calls for, Lisa's like, ooh. Um, so I did an experiment with them, and it was about whether or not our mind can manipulate technology. And I don't know if they do this experiment anymore, but basically you're on a computer, they ask you to type, and then as you're typing and doing like games and activities on the computer, you start to mess up. But the program is set up to make you get frustrated. I mean, how often have we gotten mad or frustrated at technology and it just seems to work like even worse, or your phone moves even slower when you're angry and whatnot. So this is basically what the Rhine was measuring in this experiment. Unfortunately, I was tainted because I caught on to it really early, because I'm a really good typer. Like that's like one of my things. I can type accurately at a very fast rate, and the mistakes were coming in really early. I'm like, this isn't me. What is this? So I was tainted already, so they stopped it. But I thought it was really interesting, and I don't know if they ever published the results of it, but I always think of, could this be somehow related to like poltergeist-like activity? You know, can our mind, the power of frustration with technology, you know, when you're yelling at the IT guy on the phone, I mean, are you making your machine work even more inefficiently? So, yeah. All right.
It must be why my ghost boxes cuss at me so much.
Love that.
All right. Oh, Linda, I didn't even see you there. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Oh my goodness. Linda,
She's just been sitting there looking pretty all night.
Oh my goodness. It's the way this Zoom setup is, like, oh, it's the cameras. Right. I am so sorry, Linda.
No worries. No worries.
Linda, I'll go ahead and have you take the next one, but also could you introduce yourself too?
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
Sure. I'm Linda Hillard, and I am the co-founder of Pit Crew Paranormal here in Oklahoma, and we've been together for about 12 years. So the throwing of projectiles, stones, pebbles, or other small objects, graffiti or writing on the walls in fogged mirrors or glass, imitative sounds such as a baby crying or a dog barking, objects levitating, outbreaks of fire, puddles or flooding. In severe cases, physical attacks, pinching, scratching, or biting of skin, slaps on the face by an unseen hand, attacks as these are documented in such cases as the Bell Witch and the Amherst poltergeist case.
Wow. And again, looking at this list, ghosts, yes, no, what, like this, and I think this is a big reason why poltergeists are so tricky to diagnose. Linda, what has your experience been with poltergeist activity, and have you seen some of the things on this list that we've been reading?
Well, my thing is, I definitely feel there's two schools. There's the school of the energy, the physical and emotional energy creating the force, and then there's the school of the mischievous ghost. I work in a haunted building. I have a school there for children. Toys are constantly going on and off. We have these little pea rocks, little pea pebbles in the playground, and I've been in there at night, no children to bring these things into the building, and I've had these little pebbles thrown at me. Um, I know instinctively because they fall out of the children's pockets. I know that noise of the tink, tink, tink on the floor. I know exactly what it is, go to look for it, and sure enough, one of these little rocks is there. We have always said we have a ghost. This is a new food for thought. Do we really have a ghost, or all the emotions of all those little people running around? Is things causing it that, you know, we deal with children all day. Staff is constantly frustrated. Are we causing it, or is it really happening? I don't know.
That's a great point to bring up.
I mean, it's fascinating when you think your mind can create the sound of a dog barking. But I'll share with you, we had a case about 2 years ago, and the homeowner was reporting children crying in her walls, among a lot of other things. We also got EVPs of a little girl saying, "Mommy's home, mommy help me." There was a 6-year-old girl in the house and a 13-year-old boy in the house. Through some work and a lot of intuition, we knew that the children were possibly in physical danger from the parents. I can't really get into it because we ended up in court, but we think those children, through their distress, because there was no reason for there to be anything paranormal as a spirit to be in that house. The house was not, they built the house, they lived in the house, there was nothing on the land. Well, we researched everything, but those children who, through what we found, were removed from the house by Children Protective Services, and what we had thought was happening was happening. So did those children's emotions project that crying into the walls, those EVPs? I mean, that's what we think, because what we found out was happening, was happening.
Was there any other type of activity in the house, or was it just what you mentioned?
There was some, but there was, she was also hearing other things coming from one particular place in the house. And it was, the husband had put something into the wall and a two-way radio, and he was trying to drive her nuts.
Wow.
That was easy to figure out because we all heard it. And first thing I said is like, is your husband trying to drive you crazy?
I need to write that one down.
So the things that were happening, we explained. Those things we could not explain.
Interesting. Wow.
So anything is, our human minds, we only use a part of our mind. We don't know what all they're capable of, especially when we're in extreme distress, or, your hormones are all screwed up.
Well, and that actually reminds me of another thing. Is I've also read of poltergeist cases relating to not just teenagers going through puberty, but also women going through menopause.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we have another person who has just joined us. He has beaten the beasts of Zoom. Peter, would you mind introducing yourself?
How y'all doing? My name is Pete Haviland. I'm here down in Houston, Texas. I have dealt with poltergeist activity for about the last 15 years. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I've also had some experiences of being bitten by a poltergeist at one point in time. So very well versed in the poltergeist.
Wow.
And I was
Um,
listening to Philip about some of his dealings. You know, I was working a case at one time that a lady was being sexually attacked by a force. I had placed her under hypnosis to find out that one of the issues that she was dealing with was something that was a traumatic rape that she dealt with when she was younger. And some of the triggering mechanisms that would cause the poltergeist activity was when she dealt with her relationships, and when she felt insecure with the relationship, she would relive the rape over and over. And one of the things that I had experienced during that case was I had an old FLIR, which was it was a land camera, black and white FLIR. White being hot, black being cold, and then you have your shades of gray. At one time, during one of the attacks, she pointed over in the corner and had told me that she sees him. So I put my FLIR over into the corner, and I did see a cold mass. And I was like, huh. I was wondering if it was an issue with the camera or something. So I, stuck my head from around the camera, looked in the area, didn't see anything, but put my head behind the camera again, and caught that black mass. And that was really interesting. Unfortunately, with that land camera, it didn't have a way to record. It was just a visual thing. But I'll never forget that one, because when I went over to try to deal with her and try to place her into hypnosis again to try to relieve some of the stress and anxiety she was dealing with, I had something that felt like I got kicked in the gut for some reason, and brought me to one knee. So, poltergeists can be very, very physical, but from everything that I've seen with over the last 15 years, it's usually something that we manifest. It's triggered by subconscious issues, and it can be anybody really. The one thing is always told that it's always children and children going through puberty, and yeah, that's a case. That's a case for it because it's due to the angst and anxiety of the child. But I've also have dealt with parents with traumatic events, stressors. Um, um, Depending on how the marriage is going, if there's some issue with that, they could trigger off of the wife or husband, and cause the issues within the environment itself.
And that's one reason why when we do our client interviews, we have to ask some really personal, in-depth questions.
Of course.
Are you and your husband getting along? Are you and your children getting along? Are there any fighting going on? That's because these things are important to helping us diagnose what's going on.
Of course.
right.
And that's where I spend a lot of my time with is dealing with the family and the family unit, because I learn more that way than I do with the reason why I'm there. Of the event. The event itself is important, but to get a good feel, if you're dealing with a poltergeist case, you really have to deal with the family and the family unit, and as you said, to go in depth on an interview. And of course, people aren't going to always share with you, and that's the bad thing about it, because everybody has skeletons. But that could be the frustrating part of it.
Right. Peter, would you
I'm
mind?
sorry, I overstepped. I apologize.
You're good. Peter, would you mind covering this slide with the different stages of poltergeist activity?
Well, I could go over it with you. I don't know if I agree with all of it, only because of what I've seen over the years. But because I've never really dealt with stages, I dealt with the stages of anxiety and issues with the person. But let's see, stage one, the level of activity just begins. People are generally unaware of the activities. Mild noises, raps, knocks, pets may begin to act strangely. One thing I have noticed about pets is that dogs protect and cats hunt. So that's one thing I always look for too, is the behavior of the pets. The level where people start to notice something is wrong, but may think it's in their imagination or coincidence. Yeah, because sometimes you tend to doubt what's going on because it's not really in our nature of what we deal with day by day. So I could see that. Stage three, now things are really starting to scare you. Activity intensifies, the noises, doors, cabinets opening and closing, electrical disturbances. I could see that too, but some of that is also covered in intelligent hauntings too, when you see a lot of that stuff happening as well.
Nice. All right. Let's see. Let's take on stage 4 and 5. Let's see. Matthew, stage 4 and 5.
This is the violent stage and very frightening. Stage 4, excuse me. This is the violent stage and very frightening. The activity may start to target one or more persons. Objects may start flying at people. Stage 5. In very rare cases, a poltergeist may reach this stage. At this stage, you must get out of your house because the activity may harm you. Objects may fly at you with greater force. Sparks may start some places, causing fires.
Remember the movie Firestarter with
Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore. I
May
wanted to be her so badly and be able to do that.
I interject something here about the causing fires?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Go for it.
one thing I've learned is that when you're dealing with poltergeist activity, sometimes the effects or event is when it's portrayed, it's more of a what's the word I'm looking for? I apologize, my brain's mush. A metaphor. For instance, if you see water, you're looking at sadness or depression. If there's a fire, if it causes a fire, you're dealing with anger. And depending what the anger, what the fire is, or the anger of the person that's actually manifesting a fire, I'm sorry, it's what's manifesting the fire. It could, for instance, if there's a fire on your husband's chair or something, it means that the anger is directed towards them. If it's, so it really, you have to kind of look at what's where things are.
That's a new one for me. That's interesting. Okay. Nice. Okay. I love the little effect in the corner. Nice touch. Let's see. Let's have Heather take this one on.
Many of these manifestations are common to both modern and historical poltergeist cases, suggesting that there may be a consistent pattern of phenomena involved. Most recorded poltergeist cases have occurred in Europe and America.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting for this to know, like in Europe and America. I guess there hasn't been a lot of documented poltergeist cases, and I mean, I'm trying to think of, I can't think of really a case off the top of my head from like China or Indonesia or Australia, I'm sure some of I know we do have a few Aussie folks as part of Ghost Ed 101, so I would love to hear eventually what their thoughts are on all this. But yeah,
it doesn't say that they're not happening.
Mm-hmm.
They just haven't been documented as much as ours have here in America and in Europe.
Yep. Yeah, recorded's the key word here.
Yeah, and the cultural differences.
I was going to say religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
That's a
just
great point.
from all the recorded cases, that's just where most of the documentation has been from.
Yep. Or it's come to Japan. We have no poltergeists here.
No, but they have a real big haunted forest.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they do. That's
Yeah,
not one that I'm like excited to
I'm
go
out my
visit though.
park. So,
Nice. Okay. Nice. Let's see. We'll go ahead and keep trucking along. So let's see. I feel like this is going to inspire some discussion here. So let's have Lisa take this one on.
Okay. Similarities and differences between poltergeist and haunted phenomena. Both involve moving objects, making sounds, and electrical disturbances. The difference may be the duration of the activity. Poltergeist phenomena may last only a few moments, whereas haunt phenomena will have a long period of activity. The noises heard due to poltergeist activity may be witnessed by moving or falling objects, whereas in a haunt phenomena, the source may not be found or may be heard by one person and not the other. Presence of a ghost-like person or apparition is more predominant than in haunt cases. A haunting is more likely linked to a location, whereas a poltergeist is linked to a person. So I have an anecdote.
Yes.
Why not, right? So going back to personal story with the poltergeist, my dad was a real estate developer, and that's why we were in Nevada. We're from Florida. And so he thought the family would be safe when we left Reno and we moved to Florida, because he believed with all his heart, God bless him, that poltergeist couldn't cross water. Yeah, and it's like, well, I don't know that that's true. And and my parents were big readers into the paranormal and so forth. And thankfully, maybe in Fort Myers, where I grew up, their peers were of like-minded. But I think that is one kind of indicator, is to see if that activity does move with the person. If you can move the person to a location that it has been vetted, has been cleared, and you can observe. But unfortunately, more often than not, we just don't have that kind of time. And a lot of time, the clients don't have that kind of time either.
I didn't think about that. That's a good one. That's fascinating.
There's been a few times that I've actually had to move into folks' houses with that poltergeist activity, even with a haunting. I mean, I've been there for a couple weeks, and I mean, because as you stated, Lisa, that we're not there 24/7. So even that little snapshot kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what's going on there, along with a good idea of the family dynamics, even though that they're on their best behavior.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the next one. Let's have Cliff
as long as there's no big words on this one. Okay, theories of poltergeists. Natural explanations. In some cases, the phenomena may be explained as a misinterpretation of natural events. Spiritualist explanation, the belief that poltergeist activity is caused by mischievous or malevolent spirits or ghosts or demons, believing the use of magic or religious rituals, prayer, or exorcism will remedy the activity. Psychokinetic explanations, the ability of some people, the agent, to paranormally affect physical process using mental powers because the activity seemed to focus around the agent. Poltergeist outbreaks are usually associated with high levels of emotional stress. It has been suggested environmental factors like high EMF from high voltage power lines and geomagnetic solar, those big words again, disturbances may amplify the agent's psychokinetic abilities.
This brings up an interesting point, especially with the high EMF factor. Now, in your all's experience, have you ever encountered high EMF causing poltergeist like activity, like the toys with no batteries going off, where it's not being caused by the person or the agent, but instead it's being caused by the high amounts of EMF?
I investigated a house about 7 or 8 years ago, where when we did our first check of the house to see what everything was, the kitchen, the hallway directly right next to the kitchen, and the bedroom had EMF readings of over 1,300 milligauss. I'm not talking 0.13, I'm talking 1,300.
Wow.
And what we determined was, and it took us about 15, 20 minutes only to figure this out, air conditioning units in houses have to be on a separate circuit by themselves. They can't be connected to anything else. When this house was originally built, it did not have an AC unit. It had a gigantic ceiling fan, or ceiling vent rather, attic vent. So they could just turn that vent on and it would suck all the air through the house and out the roof. Somehow when they wired in the AC, they tapped into the power for that fan and to the kitchen. When we cut the power to the kitchen, it also cut the power to the air conditioning unit. So something was crossed very bad. And this, the lady who owned the house gave us reports of vodka bottles flying off the refrigerator and hitting her in the back of the head.
Wow.
Did that happen? I don't know, but we investigated all night long. We got no evidence of anything else because we turned everything off and the house was calm. But when we turned everything back on, and you can even see it on our YouTube channel, it might have been like 1,600, I don't remember, but a very high number of EMF. When we turned everything off, the house was calm. When we turned the house back on, you could just feel the energy back in that house again because the house was wired so bad.
One of the houses that we were working with back in the early 90s, they were sitting on a power grid that we weren't aware of, and we ended up calling the electric company to see how things were set up, and we found out that it was on that electrical grid, and the EMF in that house was phenomenal as well. And they were claiming to have a lot of movement and a lot of sounds and a few smells.
The team I was on, for my team I'm on now, which Lisa knows, they investigated a case where a man was having horrible nightmares, sleepwalking, other sorts of crazy things. And they were saying, you know, something's in the house, something's possessing him, blah, blah, blah. So they find that his headboard is up against the back side of the electrical panel for the house. They said the EMF, you know, on the millimeter just flipped to, 0 because it went off the scale. I think what's it, 20,000 a millimeter? I can't remember. 2,000.
Right.
Well, it just flipped to 0. So they said you need to first move your bed away from this wall and have an electrician check your wiring. This man even got up in the middle of the night and walked through a plate glass door and cut himself all to pieces. That was the final reason that they called. So the electrician came, and apparently the panel wasn't grounded. It was just a horrible mess, and had it all fixed and never had the problem again. So EMF is dangerous.
Yes, it is. You know, one thing that we found too that is that, and the clocks that people keep by the sides of their bed. Most people use their cell phones now, but the clocks on the side of their bed, they put off a lot of EMF as well. So what we would do is ask them to move the clocks to across the room, and their sleep wasn't as disturbed as it had been next to them.
Now on the other flip side, we had a case Saturday night. The husband had committed possibly accidental suicide. She had his T-shirt wrapped around a pillow to sleep with, to have his scent still with her, because this happened in August. His side of the bed had a 3.5 reading all over his side of the bed.
Right.
Get away from the bed, 0. We looked behind the bed. There was no alarm clocks. There was no phones. There were no lamps. Nothing we could figure out that would make this reading. You go to her side of the bed, it tapered off. Go back to his side of the bed, 3.5 to 4 and flipped back and forth. So we
Wow.
said, we really would need you to get an electrician in here. We cannot figure out why the whole side of your bed has a 3.5 reading, because if it's something wrong with your wiring, it's unhealthy and possibly dangerous.
Mhm.
His tennis shoes laying in the floor read a 3.5. So the electrician came. She texted me at work, said the electrician's here. What do you want me to tell him? And I explained, I said, we used a millimeter, a single axis EMF detector. We had these readings. For your safety, we want to check your wiring, make sure everything's good. Everything is perfectly fine.
Okay.
So do we have paranormal activity? Because we debunked it with a professional electrician. So very interesting. So EMF can, it can be paranormal. It
Yes,
can
it
be
can.
residual energy from his imprint in that bed. I mean,
Could be.
I've come across a couple of cases where we've had little sections of floating high EMF.
yeah.
I mean, we just within about a 1 cubic foot area, and it never moves. Every time we go back to the same location, you can always go back with a millimeter or whatever and stick it right in the middle, and there it is. But 1 foot either direction off of that, there's nothing, but it's right there in that one little spot.
All right. Wow. I was kind of sitting here waiting, like, whoa, like as I was listening to all that. Nice. Let's have Linda take this one on.
Okay. Psychological and psychiatric explanations. Psychological and psychiatric factors are often contribute to the stress experienced by the agent. Most, but not all agents are young children or teenagers struggling with the onset of puberty. Family tensions, interpersonal problems, physical, sexual, or verbal abuse may precede an outbreak of poltergeist activity. The agents are often diagnosed with having an anxiety disorder, hysteria, or other dissociative behaviors.
As someone who deals with anxiety, I'm like, oh, yikes.
And it's not always children, like Peter said, it can be any age. It just depends on your emotional situation, and big storm, you create that RSPK stuff. So
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
I had one case that I was working that it was
Uh-oh.
And he's gone.
a relationship, and she got divorced from her husband. Her husband was very, very, very controlling, and this was back in like early '90s as well. So when she got out of that relationship, she moved into her own house, and she still kind of freaked out because what he used to do was he had put in. I don't know if y'all remember the camera, the Wi-Fi cameras when they first came out. They were like called X20 or something. That was the first one, some of the first ones that you could look over the net and find out what somebody's doing. So her husband would call her during the day and say, well, I thought you were going to go do this and do that, and why are you spending so much time here? So when she got into her new house, she was really hypersensitive, and every noise in her house had it was just amplified, and her anxiety was out of the roof. So I went in there and I was looking around. I really couldn't find anything that was going on, but she claimed, rappings and tappings and things like that. And she said she heard footsteps, but so I had placed her under hypnosis. I removed all of her anxiety for living in her new home, and I replaced it with a positive reality, meaning that when you remove something, you have to place something in. So every time that she would think of the things that would cause her anxiety, she would feel safe and secure in her home. So after I did that, haunting stopped. So yeah, I agree with the agents. That's the psychological and psychiatric explanations of that, because that just went and showed me that we create a lot of our own stuff.
All right. Nice. Thank you for that.
I overstepped.
You're good. You're good. All right. let's see. Let's have Matthew take on the poltergeist agent.
The poltergeist agent. Poltergeist cases most commonly affect the home and immediate family and occasionally the workplace. Occasionally, one member of the family seems to be the focus of the poltergeist activity. This person is present when the phenomena occurs and appears in some way to trigger their occurrence. Poltergeist cases appear to be focused around a specific person, occasionally two. If the family moves, the phenomena may follow the person known as the agent to the new home.
Forgot to unmute myself. That's a problem. All right. So, Matthew, in your experience with working in poltergeist cases, have you had to talk to somebody about like, hey, how do you handle that conversation if it's you? Like, this is coming from you.
Yeah, I cannot definitively say that I've worked a poltergeist case that is merely coming from exclusively a human agent. There's one case that over the course of about 4 years of dealing with a gentleman who was, emotionally, he has some trauma in his life that he's been dealing with ever since his divorce. And really, he isolated himself away from people, and he started having experiences in this house, mainly that would come at night when he would be when he was asleep. So of course that would raise all kinds of questions as far as like, night terrors or whatever might be naturally happening to him. His anxiety may have been manifesting these things. And I went to one house and I recorded some strange, anomalous type things that, that were happening in the house that were part of his claims when he was not home. And several years later, the guy had moved and reached out to me again to basically tell me that it had followed him all the way to this new house and how terrified he was. And he said that he would lay in bed at night and he would hear rumbling up in his attic and footsteps running across the attic, down into his garage, clear across his house to his bedroom door, where he had placed a crucifix and a poster with the Lord's Prayer. And how it wouldn't come into the bedroom, but it would stand there and growl. The man had high EMF like crazy in his bedroom. He had the digital clock on the bedstand, the red flashing ones, so set off crazy EMF. I mean, there were those factors. There was his emotional instability, but then there was also the fact that I was recording and documenting evidence that of the activity when he was not present in the house. And I don't know if he was an agent, but I definitely think he was a battery and he was feeding whatever was in the house, So once again, trying to have that conversation of, a lot of it's you, and we manifest so much through our intentions and our frequency in our environment. And so I think it all is connected. I think it's all related. And whether we know it, and obviously these people are not purposely doing this unless they're dabbling and into, those types of things. So I don't know what your question was, Alex, but I'm sure I answered it. And thank you and good night. No.
you got there. You got there.
All right. All
Yeah,
right.
it was great. Yeah.
Took the long route.
Yeah.
It's all good. Heather, have you ever had to have that conversation with a client for that? Like, hey, might be you.
Yeah, not as far as poltergeist activities related, but more or less, there's a case that we've been working on for a while, and we're starting to think that there's some type of psychological, and I haven't approached her yet. So I really can't answer this because that's one of the things that I'm dreading having to do, is to actually sit down and say, hey, we need to start looking into that. This might be you envisioning and imagining this happening.
Another thought, when clients say, well, my last house was haunted, or you should have seen what happened, at the house when I was a little girl. You have to explore the possibility that they may be having some mediumship abilities or a spiritual connection that you're not aware of, that they're not aware of. And that can be frightening to a person when you approach them about it. But I've seen it. So that's a whole different route you have to go when you think that might be happening. We had a client that things were happening in her house, and she said, "Oh yeah, well my grandfather was a medium and my aunt was a medium," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a good piece of information." She said balls of light were coming to her at night when she was trying to sleep, and we actually did get a actual true orb that glowed and cast light against the wall in her bedroom. So we think maybe she had some underlying type of mediumship ability she just wasn't aware of. So, and when the porch light's on, they're going to come visit. I mean, that's just a simple way of putting it.
That's the most Southern analogy of a haunting
I've
ever heard.
I do not have an accent. Y'all do.
Y'all do. Nice. Okay. Let's see. Who haven't we heard from in a while? Or I want to hear more from. Wahaha. Let's hear from Linda.
Okay. Poltergeist agent is usually a child, teenager, young adult, most commonly a prepubescent girl, 9 to 13 years old. The agent is usually unaware that they are the cause of the phenomena. The activity arises from the unconscious or the subconscious individual in response to emotional stress or trauma. In many cases, there are complex and emotionally conflicted family dynamics. The poltergeist phenomena are psychokinetic manifestation of the agent's intense repressed emotions. So,
why does the movie Carrie come to mind right now?
And we've kind of gone over this in our conversations in the previous. So this is just more of
reinforcing
what we're talking about. That's the typical, it seems from the research of that's recorded, and public. There may be lots of other poltergeist activities that's recorded. They're just not published in public. So this is the information we have to go on that we can actually get our hands on.
Right.
And they say the average is 9 to 13.
Nice. All right. Gotta love those hormonal bursts. Is that what we called them? Hormonal bursts of energy. All right.
Alex, I can't see the screen all the way because I've got the host view, so I may not be able to read these. So just have everybody else read them.
Okay. Can everyone else see them before I put someone on the spot? Okay.
I'm cheating. I've got my tablet going here with it.
There you go. All right, let's talk about how common are poltergeists, and let's have Peter take this one on since he has his tablet.
Oh, that was me with the tablet.
Yes. Oh wait. Oh, Cliff. Sorry.
Yes.
I have to look at the boxes because that's my key here. So that was Cliff.
Okay.
All right, Cliff, go for it.
All right. Poltergeists are very often children or adolescents, but not always. Adults under extreme stress can be agents as well, especially if they have unresolved stresses from childhood. It is unknown how common poltergeist activity is. Remarkable cases in which objects are thrown are rare, but those are the cases that get attention and are documented, especially if the activity persists over many days, weeks, or months. There are many more cases where the activity happens just once or on a rare occasion. And that was when, Heather talked about she's, been on some cases where she was getting to the point where she didn't want to have to say that they're the cause. How long does somebody have to watch a certain situation before they can make that kind of conclusion? This is not something you can do, in a couple of days. This is something that I would think would have to take forever or, a very long period of time to make that kind of determination.
And therapy.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Cliff, anyone have thoughts on that?
And this is just so much why our interviewing is so important when you're trying to figure out who is this agent. And you should, if at all possible, interview everyone separately to see if they say something different than the brother or the sister or the parents. And we have to, use common sense and critical objective thinking and try to figure out what's really going on here that they're not telling us.
Yeah.
Because
All
sometimes they won't open all the way up to you, even though they may have asked you into their home to check this stuff out. They may still not even be 100% open with you because they're afraid of what's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
The case I dealt with the man that had all the issues. I mean, he lived there by himself, and part of his guilt and everything that he carried with him, his anger, was because a preacher had told him that because he was alone, he probably pleasured himself, and that was a sin. And basically, he brought demons into his house. Wow. Imagine trying to diffuse that in his head.
Wow.
But he was just trying to help.
All my friends probably have a lot of demons in their house.
It's more of those hormonal outbursts.
Okay. Oh man. All right.
I think she's blushing
a little bit. Anyway, that was an interesting point. All right. Let's get to the tricky part of this whole topic right here. How do you recognize a poltergeist? And let's see. Let's have Peter take this one, since given his background experience in this, because I don't have 15 years of poltergeist investigations under my belt. So if you can see it, Peter, let me know.
Is he with us?
He is, but can't hear him. He's muted. Let's see what happens if... Peter, if you are with us, make a sound. Knock 3 times.
If he's not muted, he must be having issues.
Oh no. All right, let's sorry, Peter. Let's have Lisa take this one. Lisa, if you are with us, make a sound.
I am. Should I knock?
Knock 3 times.
3 times. 3 times for yes, 1 for no.
How do you recognize a poltergeist? An experienced paranormal investigator or a parapsychologist is needed to determine if the activity is related to a haunt or a poltergeist. The investigator will look at other factors, since poltergeist activity is a psychic effect rather than a spirit-based activity. The investigator will try to determine who the agent is. The investigator will thoroughly examine the personal and family dynamics in the home.
All right.
And something we haven't talked about also is we've just been comparing or talking about the distinctions between a haunt and a poltergeist, but then we also have that elusive, extremely rare, like more rare than poltergeist, is the possessions.
Yes.
Pandora's box just opened.
Yeah, I just saw a question on Facebook. It said how to distinguish poltergeists from demons.
Yep.
And if a demon is trying to imitate a poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
If I determine anything is demonic, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a buddy of mine who that's all he deals with. And I go with him and I'm his cameraman for some of his stuff, but I just pretty much keep my mouth shut and let him do all the talking. I don't want any part of that.
Right.
So much of the original Exorcist case, the Exorcist movie is based on, the haunted boy, so much of that started just like stage 1 of Poltergeist, started with rapping and scratching on the walls. So I think it would take a long time for some of this stuff to develop and a lot of patience on the behalf of the investigator and researcher to really be able to make sense of any of it. And of course, you know how this stuff works. Some things you may never find out the true answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that I've done is I have my clients keep a log and to keep track of the event, the emotions prior to and after, and what the event was, so that you could try to drill into who's causing what and who's the person that is being caused to. So it does take a long time. It's a lot. It's a lot of it's a lot of delving down. It's a lot of interview. One of the things that I had only one case in my history so far, and it's just mine. That I had a lady that contacted us saying that she was having the sounds of growling, some of footsteps, and I brought a priest over that I was working with at the time, and he came over and was preparing to go through the taking of the Eucharist and preparing the house for a blessing. And as he was doing that, I had noticed that the temperature of the house was about 90 degrees, but when I looked on the wall, it was about 70. So evidently something had made the environment change. As we walked the house, and he was continuing with the blessing and calling of the saints, we got to this one room that the lady said that it was open, and we couldn't get into it. And finally, after Father had sprinkled it with some holy water, whatever happened to the door, we could now get into. I don't know what caused it. When we went into the room, there was an altar for Santeria. And one of the things we found out after we found that, because she didn't want us to go in there anyway, is that she was practicing Santeria. She was cursing her husband for abusing her, but yet looking for jobs for being a teacher. So that's the closest I've ever been to having anything negative. If I've ever dealt with anything that was poltergeist-like or demonic, it's usually ended up being something that had to do with the person. And I've learned that through hypnosis and finding what triggers are. So I work with a priest right now to assess cases, and I have yet to turn over a case that has anything to do with a demonic possession. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I know it's pretty rare when it does, but like I said, that's the only case I've ever had that I didn't know what to classify it as.
I think there are certain stages of demonic possession. It's obsession, suppression / depression, and then possession. So there are certain stages you'll go through before you're fully possessed, which I think is the rarest of all types of demonic possessions, is being a fully possessed person, because at that stage you're pretty much done for, from what I've been in lectures.
From what I understand.
Hearing about. So there's going to be some very similar maybe to a poltergeist agent as a child, but there's certain telltale signs in demonic possession cases that will differentiate from what I have researched from a hormonal person. I mean, a hormonal person's not going to start speaking Latin for no reason. I mean, certain signs that will show you the difference.
Or stand on top of the house with a gun telling you to get in the house.
Oh, and I've done that.
Only during one of your hormonal problems.
Yeah, one of my hormonal outbursts.
Oh, man.
He's raging again.
Oh, boy. All right. So we got this is our last educational slide. Then we're going to go into a few cases. just so in case anyone's wondering, hey, where are we on this? And then I'd like to try to get at least 15, 20 minutes for questions, because I know we did get a lot of questions in the chat. So, all right. So dealing with a poltergeist, let's try again, Peter. There we go.
Okay, now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Dealing with a poltergeist. Once it's confirmed you have a poltergeist case, the question is how to deal with it. The first option is to wait until it ends. Most cases are short-lived. The average time period can be from a few days to a few weeks. In rare cases, it extends up to months. I have to say on that one that I did have a poltergeist case that lasted up to about a year and a half. A lot of it had to do with the person didn't want to go to counseling. They didn't want to try to deal with any of the trauma that he dealt with in the past. So it still sporadically came up, and it was about a year and a half until he accepted the issues and resolved them. So it can actually go longer, but it tends to wind up in probably about 6 months. And that's because you usually are working with a person and they start to learn what's going on, start to deal with issues and things like that. And from what I've seen, I don't know how everybody else on the panel, I don't know how they've experienced it. Counseling, best option to consult a psychological counselor who deals with the identified agent or the family, who can treat their emotional disturbances. I have found that it is very, very good to do that, especially when they've come to the realization that it is an issue and they are willing to go to counseling. They have to want to have the help. You can't force help on anybody, no matter how much you want to try to help. They have to be the ones that want the help to heal themselves.
And this is a case where sage and holy water is not going to do anything.
No, it's just going to make the house smell good and stain your clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
It's been my experience that the agent with a possible poltergeist, who is the source of the poltergeist activity, rarely wants to go to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it incredibly hard to convince. In fact, there were times when we would have to just sever ties with the client because the client may subconsciously know, and the counseling is incredibly difficult. And I think that it's very important that teams just, walk away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to do that. It's hard because you know that you want to try to help that person. But again, like I said, you can't force a person to get help. And once you've made your recommendation and your suggestions, it's truly up to them if they want to do it or not. That's not saying that you haven't done everything you can, because you have at that point.
And that also goes with haunt cases and other entities. If you have a client that is obsessed with the activity and the thought that they have something going on in their house, as much as they say they want to get rid of it, they keep inviting it and doing things to make it reoccur. And we've had to walk away before from a case. We went 3 times and he just wouldn't follow the protocol he needed to follow to get the problem solved. And eventually his house caught on fire and burnt up. So I don't know if that was, malevolent spirits or not, but who knows?
All right.
And you can't beat yourself up over that either. Because I know a lot of folks want to, like I said, a lot of folks go into help, and sometimes they try to over help. And, you can't beat yourself up if they say no. You just can't.
It's a good point. You can only do so much to help somebody, and they have to eventually help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or get
all
Zelda
right.
to help you. Or get Zelda.
Oh gosh, this house is clean. Yes. Carrie Ann. Anyway, famous poltergeist cases.
Nope.
Don't go into the light.
Don't go into the light. Don't go into the light, Philip.
This meeting has
I
many
look better in
hearts.
the dark anyway, so I'm going to stay away from the light.
I'll burn if I get close to the light. Anyway.
Ah,
So, just like holy water. Enfield poltergeist case. I'll take volunteers for this one. Who would like to take this one on?
Well, I did the research for this one, so
Okay.
if I can see all the slide, I
Go
might have to
for it.
make some words. Enfield poltergeist. This is one of the most publicized poltergeist labeled cases that there is, and there is a ton of information on the internet about this. There's a lot of YouTube videos of the family interviews, so you can go on and see all this for yourself. But we'll just go over a little bit about the case.
Philip, would it be okay if I posted some of that in on our site so people can use it as a reference?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'll do that after this.
You're probably very aware of this case.
Oh, yes, sir.
1977, the strange activities seemed to center around the daughter, Peggy Harper, and a divorcee in her mid-40s. Oh, that poor divorcee. Janet and the 11-year-old brother, Pete.
Wasn't me,
Complained
I
that their
promise.
beds were jolting up and down and going all funny. As soon as Mrs. Harper entered the room, the movement stopped. As far as she was concerned, her kids were making it all up and playing pranks. But things got progressively more bizarre from there. Shuffling noises, knocks on the walls, followed by a heavy chest of drawers sliding itself across the floor. Mrs. Harper promptly got the children out of the house, ran to the neighbor's house, and asked for assistance. The neighbors came over, searched the house, the garden, found no one, which is they were expecting to find a person to be causing this. Soon, the neighbors also heard the knocks on the walls, which continued at intervals. At 11 p.m. that evening, they called the police. The police came, they heard the knocks. One officer even saw a chair move across the floor. And if you read the report, it was a big, heavy chair. And he put this in his statement to confirm. And I think there was a police officer from this investigation who quit the force after this case because he was so affected by it. Several people who witnessed the events that occurred in the following days, Lego bricks were thrown, that they were often hot to the touch when they would pick up the things that were thrown. In September of that year, I can't read her name, Grosset of the Society for Psychical Research, which that's a big deal in England, came to investigate. Grosset claims that he experienced strange happenings. First, a marble was thrown at him from an unseen hand. He saw doors open and close by themselves and claimed to feel a sudden breeze that seemed to move up from his feet to his head.
Wow. Let's see. Let's move on. We'll do the next one too while we're here to tell the whole story.
Grosset later joined the investigation. Was later joined in the investigation by writer Guy Lyon Playfair, and together they studied this case for 2 years. Now, here's a case that didn't last a few months. It supposedly went on for 2 years. The knocking on the walls and floors became almost nightly occurrence. Furniture slid across the floor, was thrown down the stairs. Drawers wrenched out of their dressing tables. Toys and other objects would fly across the room. Bedclothes were pulled off. Water was found in mysterious puddles on the floor, where that could lead to something that Peter said earlier when there's water. There were outbreaks of fire followed by inexplicable extinguishing. In the background, you can see one of the girls up in the air. These pictures are all over the internet. The case became decidedly unnerving when the spirits revealed themselves through Jane speaking in a deep, gravelly voice. The spirit announced his name was Bill and he had died in the house. A fact that has been verified. The voices and the phenomena have been recorded on tape and film, and Playfair has written a book about the case called The house is haunted. Now you can find the video on YouTube of her speaking in this weird voice, but I want to warn you, these girls are very odd. So when you just take note of that before you watch them, the girls are a little off in my opinion. Despite the documentation, however, much controversy surrounds the case. Skeptics claim the case is nothing more than the work of a very clever and mischievous girl, Janet. The poltergeist activity always stopped when she was watched closely and when she was taken to the hospital for several days to be tested for physical or mental abnormality. The phenomenon ceased in the house. Some researchers believe that Janet taught herself to speak in the strange male voice and that the photos of her levitating in the bedroom merely caught her jumping off her bed. Was this a poltergeist case, or was this girl just playing tricks on the family? Now, from the photos that I've seen of her supposedly levitating off her bed, they look like she's jumping to me. But some of the eyewitness reports are pretty fascinating when this police officer said he saw this huge chair just slide across the floor. I don't know how a girl would fake that, but so go online and find out, research this case. It's absolutely fascinating. And find the video where she's speaking in that weird voice that, and is she faking it or not, Decide for yourself.
Peter, you're muted again. Or sound issues. Oh no, Peter.
We've
Can't
lost
hear
Peter.
We
We'll
can't hear
say-
you, Peter.
He's been having internet issues all evening.
Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you look at the pictures, also A&E Network did a 3-part series that broadcast in England about the Enfield haunting. And if you're curious to know more about it, I would highly suggest you watch the A&E Network instead of the Conjuring 2, because that one that one's not even close to being accurate. The Warrens didn't investigate it and so forth. So if you are curious and want to know more, I did write a blog about this when Conjuring 2 came out, about going to the A&E series. And also the British are incredibly curious about the paranormal. And so if you are looking for docu-series type of things, streaming and YouTube are really good at broadcasting British productions, and take a look at there. So don't listen, or don't be swayed by James Wan and Conjuring 2.
It's a great fictional movie.
Yeah. Fiction based on, I hate that when they ruin it, because all it does is really it throws more shade on the paranormal, and people are like, see, this is supposed to be the Enfield haunting, and it's all, they weren't even there, they just flew in for a book signing kind of thing. And it's like, don't do that.
Yeah,
I'll get off now.
All right, any other thoughts on the Enfield poltergeist?
I don't want any teenage girls living in my house.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. I've read This House is Haunted, and it is a fascinating case. And I mean, and if I remember correctly, they did catch Janet faking a few things, but they had also with the poltergeist case for Tina Rush Boyer, they also had caught her faking things, but then incredible things were happening as well, with seen by eyewitnesses that they couldn't explain. So anyway, we'll move on to the next one. The 966 Lindley Street, Bridgeport, Connecticut poltergeist.
I've got this one.
All right, Linda.
So, yeah, that seems to be like a common thread, because also in this one of the police officers state that he caught the little girl doing something, but at the same time, incredible unexplained events were also occurring. This one differs in that some of the things happened when she was not in the home. as opposed to always being in the home. This poltergeist haunting is considered among paranormal investigators as one of the most documented cases in history. It began when the occupants of the home, Jared and Laura Gooden, adopted their daughter Marcia. Not long after the adoption, they began to experience unusual behavior in their home. Rooms would be found ransacked, drawers opened, and items tossed throughout the home. In 1974, the activity escalated, and in November of that year, Mr. Gooden called the police to his home. There are many documented accounts of what the police witnessed. Pictures jumping off the walls. One account, a heavy recliner chair that had Marcia sitting in it, was witnessed by several police officers levitating and rotating between the floor and the ceiling. A TV and refrigerator also were documented as levitating. Objects flew off the shelves and crashed to the floor. There were reports of continual pounding, noises on the walls, but the most peculiar report is that of the family cat Sam singing jingle bells in perfect English, but in somewhat of an odd human voice. Now that is something I would like to witness. The Warrens were called in and believed that the disturbances centered around the 10-year-old daughter. They believed it was due to her unhappiness and angry aura that attracted what was behind the agitated activity. Interesting note, the activity began shortly after the release of the movie The Exorcist, and this excited the public's curiosity and imagination. Rumors of a demonically possessed girl in their very own neighborhood began to form. Onlookers and the media storm of reporters flocked to the scene, put the neighborhood on lockdown, and traffic was backed up for miles night after night. One of the officers believes he caught Marcia trying to tip over a television with her foot. When confronted, she admitted to being behind the activity. She liked the attention that was directed to her. The media attention ended abruptly when the local police chief announced that the haunting was a hoax. The young girl was responsible for the events and was encouraged by her parents for publicity, and they were cashing in on their new fame. Many police officers, neighbors, and priests still stand by what they witnessed. The things that happened when the girl was not present in the home, they believe it was not a hoax, but a real poltergeist haunting. And they feel that the police chief was less interested in finding out the truth and more interested in ending the public disruption that was being caused. The debate goes on still today as to whether the Lindley house was indeed a poltergeist haunting. So we have all the same traits. You know, some people say the people in the home were causing it, physically causing it, not just energy wise for attention or whatever. Things happened in this house when the girl was not present, which in a poltergeist case, usually that's not the case. The agent is usually present. It usually stops when the agent leaves the area. Credible witnesses have stated that they've seen things happening in this home when she was not present. So who's to say, you know, without being there and actually seeing it for ourselves, who's to say how much of it was hype and how much of it was for real?
Mm-hmm. Wow. This
Just
is a
follow them into
case.
the house and make money.
That's right.
Yeah. Quick buck. Quick passive buck. Yeah, that's a tough one. I wasn't familiar with this case, so I learned something tonight.
You know,
Something
the cat
else.
got me. I would love to see a cat singing jingle bells in perfect English, but you know, was that actually recorded? I don't know.
I was about to say, if you're gonna make a claim like that, I hope it was on video.
I wish my refrigerator would levitate so I could clean under it.
Yeah. All right. And here we have lots of poltergeist cases or famous cases. Yeah, so in case you want to look into more more poltergeist cases, here's a little snippet, take a screenshot, write some notes down, and take a look at on your own.
And these are listed in by date, starting with the earliest on up to 2004 and 5. One that's very interesting is the Borley Rectory. That was investigated by Harry Price, if you remember in our presentation of paranormal history and equipment. That's who investigated that case there, and it's a really fascinating case. It's burnt down since it's investigated, but there are a few movies that you can find on really D-list movie list about it, but I found one and it was absolutely completely made up. I was totally disappointed, but it had a Harry Price character, but that one's a really good one to look into.
And Harry Price wrote a very good book called The Most Haunted House in England, and it is about the Borley Rectory. So it's a good one to read.
The talking cat reminded me of the case Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which
that's interesting.
Yeah, well, in Jeff the Talking Mongoose is probably not a poltergeist. Without me being totally honest and saying that it really isn't, but I will tell you that a whole island's economy has been built around Jeff the Talking Mongoose with a museum and everything, so that it made my bucket list for going after post-COVID. But
and another one that's listed here that I hear so much about, the Bell Witch. But I don't know why that's considered a poltergeist. I'm not super familiar with that case, but I thought it was about a woman. So I don't know why it's labeled as poltergeist. So I guess I should look into that a little more.
That one's a fascinating one. Because initially it was believed that the Bell's neighbor was involved because of land tax rent sort of dispute. But then there were certain things happening, like Betsy was getting assaulted. They were hearing the entity speak scripture and have full out conversations with guests. There's a whole thing happening here that's very consistent with like poltergeist lore and poltergeist traits and like ghost lore. So yeah. All right. So we have about 19 minutes for questions. I know we did get a lot of questions sent via chat. So I was watching a little bit, but if I miss your question, it's not intentional. There's over 140-ish comments. So it's a lot. So let's see. And a lot of these were already answered to in the presentation. So, and anyone on the panel, if there's a question that stood out to you that you would like to take on, by all means, feel free to bring it up.
I saw one that someone asked, how are these interviews conducted, audio, video? And I assume he meant our interviews of clients. And I said, that depends on the team itself, audio or video. It depends on if your client wants to be on video talking about very personal things or not. So that's up to the individual client and the team. And there's no set rules about how you interview. Should be a really good interview, but there are no set rules, and that we have to in the paranormal book that we go by.
Yeah. But once you start an interview process, always keep your interview the same every single time, every case, because if you change your interviews up, people are going to start saying, well, you didn't ask this, you didn't ask this, or whatever. Once you start the interviews, make sure you do each interview the exact same way.
Another question is, how many supposed demonic cases are actually poltergeist cases or just mental health problems? Well, we don't know this information unless it's documented and published and available to look at. So statistics, it's so hard to say, oh, there's 45% are, mental health issues. There's not really a way to know it, because this is another aspect where paraunity comes in. We need to share information that we get when we do an investigation so we can learn, things like this. Like, well, what percentage out of what we've all seen together was debunked? So there's really no way, unless it's been documented, published, and compared, to be able to give statistics, really. I mean, anybody else have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it would really be hard to put those kind of numbers together and, etch them in stone and say, this is the number. There's just no way you could.
Yeah.
Data is a tricky thing. Data collection and coming up with the numbers. And I think what it comes back to is, as Philip said, it comes down to paraunity. I mean, we go through the published works that have the published studies that have already been released by like the Rhine or SPR or ASPR when they were active. They might still be active. And then also compare those numbers with now. And it's interesting when we talk about interviews too. I mean, and there is a specific way to interview as well, so that you're not, as someone mentioned in the comments, leading the person. I mean, we have a licensed therapist on our team, and she does the interviews because she's much more familiar with the human psychology side of it, where she can lead that without ever like indicating or leading the client into a direction that could be compromised, because we want as much truth and authenticity as we can. So, and she does the interviews and then I'll basically give her my follow-up question, and then she'll ask it in her language, in her verbiage that she uses. So at least that's how we do it with our team. So, and that's because we do have someone who is a mental health specialist.
And I can plug one of our educators' books. Martha Hazard-Decker, Paranormal Profiling is How to Interview Clients. She was a detective, a police officer. So, I mean, there's things like nonverbal communication, things you've got to watch for, body language, that kind of thing. So this is a good book if you want to learn how to interview like a detective would interview. Ask the same question 4 different ways and see if you get the same answer, type of thing.
Nice. All right. Oh, my thing closed.
That's all the questions that I see.
Okay.
Do you have any others?
Let's see. I'm looking. Someone had asked about the parameters to measure a poltergeist haunting or poltergeist case. Which it's an interesting question, but I feel like it's also can be a complicated process. Because I mean, this is a very high level presentation that's 2 hours. I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff can be covered in like series and like a semester of college. But yeah, what are your thoughts on like the if I'm understanding this question correctly, the perimeters of distinguishing a poltergeist case?
Heather might be good with that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said earlier, I don't really have much experience with dealing with poltergeist cases, but it all comes down to you just have to document. And I always suggest that 1 investigation or 2 investigations is not enough to determine even if a house is haunted. So you do need to go back multiple times, as well as conduct the interview multiple times throughout the course of it and notice for any differences. And if you start spotting things that aren't your typical ghost behavior, that's where you can start going towards the poltergeist, or even if you take it to the demonic route. So it's all about knowing what your standard hauntings are and going from there.
And if it is spontaneous, you may need to go back, many, many times, as Peter would say, because like a spirit haunting, activity is usually between 3 and 6 a.m. A lot of times we ask clients, so when does it seem to be most active? And they say, well, it seems to be most active in this area of time. Whereas a poltergeist activity, depends on the the agent's outburst of emotion. So you may have to go there quite often before one of these spontaneous recurrent events happens. So, you know, it's gonna be a whole different ball game than a spirit ghost haunting.
Right. And it's also all about documenting the data. You want to make sure that you get every type of data possible, because that'll help you weed out what type of haunting it is and help you lead to whatever path you need to go to. Without that data, you have nowhere to go.
Exactly.
And we're also answering it in terms of thinking that these are isolated phenomena where you could have a poltergeist with a haunting with, you know, you can have multiple layers of things going on. And by going multiple times for going back and recording and everything, you can try to isolate some things, but sometimes it's really difficult to do that.
Absolutely. In this case that we had Saturday night, where we had the EMF on the man's side of the bed. Also in the basement, we got some female voice EVPs, which make no sense with what we were there to investigate, as far as the lady thinking her husband was there seeing shadows in the house. So now we've got to go a different route, do more research on the house, you know, not taking at face value that you know, what she's seeing is her husband. So sometimes you'll run into something like, oh, wasn't quite expecting that, and that's going to take me down a whole different path. So we're going to have to go back and try some different things after finding out that evidence. But we're at about almost 2 hours, so
going on, and by going,
Oop.
I
Sorry.
heard myself for a second. That was terrifying.
Sorry.
I'd like to make an announcement. I want to congratulate Heather for starting her own team.
Woohoo!
Very exciting.
Yay.
Takes a lot of courage and a lot of work. So
Yeah.
wish you the best.
Thank you.
And does anybody have any announcements? Heather, I believe, is going to talk about the October 21st class. I have a lot going on in the next month. So Heather's going to get everybody on board with the next one.
Yeah, basically what we're going to do is we're going to open up the educators for a Q&A. And I know Peter and I have talked about it, and we're going to probably do the first one based on your questions about parapsychology. But we're also going to open it up to any questions you guys might have. So stay tuned to the page. You've already seen me probably post a couple times. If you could ask any of our educators a question, what would it be? You're going to see similar posts like that, and we're going to be writing everything down. And then our next session, in addition to taking live questions, we'll be going over those lists.
That will be good. So everybody get your questions in order.
Thanks. All right. Great. Well, I think we're safe to go ahead and close this out. But before we say goodbye, I want to have the panelists, those who are still with us. Peter had to drop off, and Matthew had to drop off too because of tech issues. But let's start with Lisa. Where can people find you?
oh, the stalking begins.
Yes.
They can go to thehauntedlibrarian.com. That's where I've been blogging since 2012. And then I have a radio show, The Haunted Librarian Show, which airs every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on midnight.fm. It's a new paranormal internet radio station that has, it's got some great, it runs the gamut of the types of shows and programming that are on there. And I'm just so honored to be one of their radio hosts. So www.thehauntedlibrarian.com or tune in to me on Thursday nights on midnight.fm.
Nice. Awesome. Cliff, where can people find you?
Oh, mainly on Facebook. We have my team's got a Facebook page, Ghost Stalkers, one word. We also have a website that's got a name about this long because it's one of those free sites. But just call the Google, as my mom used to say, and just look up the Ghost Stalkers, and that's where we got all of our stuff.
Nice. All right. And Heather.
Well, basically, you can find me on Facebook. I have Exploration Paranormal, as well as if you go to @Dr. Heather Lee, you'll find it where I post all my blog posts. And you can also find me as a co-host for Touch of Magic. We have a podcast that runs on YouTube and iTunes. And there was one question, I hate to bring this up now, but someone did ask about where do you get a PhD in paranormal science? I received mine from the Institute of Metaphysical and Humanistic Science, but you could also Google search and there's a whole bunch of other online universities you can get one from.
Nice. Awesome. Did I miss anyone else besides Philip? I'm going to get to Philip last but not least, because I think I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Linda, we lost Linda, I think. Did we? Yes.
Okay.
I don't see Linda. Okay. Where can we find Linda on Facebook? Yeah, maybe she comes back. We can have her talk. Yeah. So Philip, where can people find you?
You can find me mostly on Facebook. My Mystery Center for Advanced Paranormal Phenomena, my team page. I also have a personal paranormal page where I put some of the crazy stuff that I do sometimes, like my video loop ITC and my water scrying. It's called Brave Souls Paranormal 2 because I have Brave Souls Paranormal, but I'm locked out of that account. Thank you, Facebook. But and also I am going to be having an art show in the spring at the Spirit Art Gallery in Lilydale, New York, which is the spiritualist village. Some of my water scrying images are on canvas, I think about 9 or 10, I believe. So I think it's going to be in the spring, hopefully after we can get a COVID control. So looking forward to that. So hopefully you can check that out.
Nice.
Okay, I have to just interject. I did not know about you being, or I've forgotten about Lilydale. So that means road trip.
If we can safely get there, I need to be there for the show. Yeah. It was supposed to be this year, but COVID knocked it out. But she's got the prints in on canvas. They look great. So very excited.
Congratulations. You should, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Nice. That's amazing. All right. I think we are good to go. Thank you all on Facebook for watching. Thank you all for your comments and questions. And we will see you in two weeks. Yes, 2 weeks. All right. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.